Join me now, lawyer, political commentator, and former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Joseph diGenova. Thank you so much for joining me. You're also part of President Trump's legal team. You were at this press conference yesterday. I saw you standing there on the platform. Let's go over some of the key claims and allegations that were presented by Team Trump yesterday, because there's so much to unpack.
Well, the most important one is the denial of equal protection and due process in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and elsewhere, Wisconsin. Now, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of votes, indeed several million votes, were counted. These are mail-in votes. These are votes that came in after the closing of the polls, and they number in the millions. The observers who are legally allowed to be in the counting area were not allowed to be close enough to view the envelopes. What happens when you have an absentee ballot, a mail-in ballot, or a mail-out ballot is it comes in an envelope. On that envelope is very important information: a signature, a date stamp, other information. Once that ballot is removed from that envelope and that envelope is thrown away, you can never go back and verify that particular vote. That happened in over 800,000 cases in Pennsylvania. And the bottom line is this, and in Detroit. And the bottom line is this: not a single Republican observer viewed any of those 800,000 envelopes. So therefore, they were never able to verify what is being claimed as a legitimate vote. That is the single most important allegation. After that, we have statistical anomalies. There are votes that are astronomically different than historical records indicate. Those anomalies include too many people voting, percentages of errors. For example, usually in mail-ins, there's a very substantial error rate because people make mistakes, usually 3% or more. In these mail-in, mail-out, and absentee ballots, there is less than 1%. In fact, it's 0.03% error rate. That's a statistical impossibility. And so what do all of these statistics mean? They mean that this was not an accident. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a coincidence with a purpose. And that purpose was a scheme, a plan to do exactly what the Democrats started doing 3 years ago, which was try to get all the states to change their mail-in voting procedures to allow this to occur. And by the way, this is very important. They started doing this change to mail-in ballots long before COVID ever existed. So COVID has nothing to do with this. That's not the reason this was set up. This was set up as a plan to make sure they were able to get enough votes after midnight to give somebody a victory.
Yeah, no, Democrats have been pushing for this for years, and then they used COVID-19 as an excuse to push it through. And you pointed out, I mean, there's just really strange things going on, like the overvote, for example, which we heard Giuliani say in the video, 100 to 200% voter turnout. We have kids voting. We have dead people voting. There's real examples of voter fraud, yet people in the media, reporters, investigative journalists, like, they're all turning a blind eye to this. They don't care. In fact, those who question voter fraud and use these real examples are written off as like conspiracy theorists and liars, and, you know, President Trump's doing damage to democracy. But no, there's real questions, and these legal challenges are legitimate. And there's some things that these reporters should be concerned about, and they're not. I mean, it's really disturbing. And I saw some of the questions that were thrown at you guys yesterday, and you could feel the hostility.
Well, there's no doubt that a very significant number of people in the press hate this president and hate anybody who tries to help him or work for him. We've had lawyers on our team threaten. People have had to drop out of the representation. There was a firm in Philadelphia that had to drop out because they were receiving threats to their lawyers. One of our lawyers in Philadelphia has U.S. Marshals protecting her because of death threats. This is something that the media doesn't care about. You haven't seen a single story outside of local press in Pennsylvania reporting about the death threats against lawyers representing the president. And that's because the media doesn't care. They'd be quite happy if somebody on the Trump team was killed. It's really sort of sick We don't have journalism anymore. We have advocacy and propagandists. And we just have to live with that until the American people force a change in journalism. But they hate this president and they hate anybody who's helping them.
Well, and we saw what happened in Michigan, where the canvassers in Wayne County were threatened. They were intimidated. Yes. They were doxxed to the point that they changed their vote. And then they ended up coming out and changing their vote again because they realized that it wasn't right. They needed to do the correct thing, which was to be honest and truthful. And they had real concerns about the voting tally in Michigan and in their county. So, but yeah, where's the outrage? Could you imagine if that was the other way around? And I mean, we saw the video of them even being threatened. So it's just really incredible.
Well, I think one of the best pieces of evidence of how corrupt the voting process was in Detroit, Michigan, was that canvassing video showing how the people who were doing the canvassing and the two members of the certification team who were accused of being racist, having their integrity questioned. One of the most amazing performances. How can anybody have confidence in the performance of those other public officials threatening two canvassers that way? What it does show is the partisan nature of what happened in Detroit, and it underscores the importance of getting to the bottom of the hundreds of thousands of votes which were driven into the counting center in Detroit at 4:30 in the morning, where the ballots were pristine, untouched, had a single circle with Joe Biden's name on it circled, all the same, all identical, hundreds of thousands of votes. So once again, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, and elsewhere, Trump goes to bed with hundreds of thousands of vote leads in each state, wakes up in the morning, and he's behind. That is a statistical impossibility, and it was done for one reason. It's a result of fraud.
Yeah, and people say this election a referendum on President Trump and his policies and his hateful rhetoric and his tweets. But at the end of the day, he got way more votes than in 2016. And I haven't met anyone who's voted for Trump who didn't vote for Trump in this election. So that's a total fraud and scam. Really quickly, what really stood out to me in the press conference yesterday was Sidney Powell talking about the voting machines, suggesting that our votes are being counted overseas, that Dominion voting machines and Smartmatic use software that are controlled by foreign interests. If you could expand on that.
I noticed that Dominion Software and its other entities issued a statement today saying they're not controlled by foreign entities, et cetera, et cetera. They never denied that the votes are actually counted in computers in Frankfurt, Germany, and Barcelona, Spain. Ask yourself this question. Why would any state hire a company which is going to have its vote tallies done in Frankfurt, Germany, and Barcelona, Spain, where the tallying cannot be monitored by any American citizen during the process, and where tabulations could be altered without the knowledge of anybody, because these computer systems have a back door so that they can be hacked? My answer to Dominion is allow all of your computers to be subject to a forensic audit immediately. Let's see if they agree to that.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about the Georgia recount, Biden pulling ahead. And at the end of the day, if you have a bunch of fraudulent votes and you count the fraudulent votes again, you're going to get the same result.
Well, the Georgia recount is a joke. It's really a Monty Python vote. What they've done is they took soiled ballots, despoiled ballots, and recounted the same ballots. They didn't do anything. They didn't go back and check. They didn't go back and do any statistical analysis. They simply by hand counted the same corrupted ballots a second time. That is not a recount. It's not an audit. It is a joke, and it will not stand up. And additional lawsuits are being filed today on this, not only by the Trump campaign, but by 3 or 4 other public interest groups in Georgia.
Yeah, my question is, where is the FBI? I mean, isn't this something that they should tackle? Because you heard the reporters asking you guys questions yesterday that really you can't answer. You need the help of government authorities for some of the things that you're looking for in your legal challenges. Now, what was it in Michigan? There was like over 200 and something affidavits. I mean, people are giving information. They're so, like whistleblowers. And these reporters are pretending that this isn't the right process.
First of all, we have hundreds and hundreds of affidavits in each precinct, including Democrat poll workers who were being whistleblowers about the corruption that they were seeing, being ordered to change dates on ballots, in other words, being ordered to backdate them so they would meet the deadline, putting names on envelopes and ballots that were non-existent, going to the registrations and getting the name of a voter and putting it on a ballot. There are hundreds and hundreds in each state, so there are thousands of these affidavits. Where is the FBI? That is a very good question. I can only, Chris Wray, our FBI director, is the only person who knows the answer to that. But I can tell you from all of our work in all of the states, talking to all of our lawyers on the ground, not one single group of lawyers has been contacted by the FBI for information, and neither has any local Republican counting group or monitoring group.
Yeah. Well, we're going to leave it here. Thank you again. Keep fighting the good fight. And as I said, Trump supporters across the country, they want answers. They want to make sure that this is a free and fair election. Thank you.